It's springtime, and I have a couple of warm weather related issues that I want to yak about today. They're much more serious than the hobby and entertainment topics I typically cover, but that just means they're that much more important to talk about. So let's do that. So here I am a few months after that intro was filmed on a beautiful wet day. Just a day after I spent 6.5 hours in a merge because my body was not doing what I needed it to do. Bad guts, bad. Talking about body stuff. Oh yeah. So I filmed that intro at the beginning of spring, and now I'm getting around to doing the rest of this video at the end of summertime, which means that by the time I get it edited and posted, I might be talking about these warm weather issues in the middle of winter, but we'll see what happens. There are two major topics I wanted to cover. The first was the absurd practice of tanning. It's so bizarre to me that fairer-skinned folk will so recklessly risk acquiring malignant melanoma so that the tint of their skin will be slightly darker than their natural tint for a temporary period of time. My hope is that the practice of tanning will before too much longer be seen along the same lines as smoking, where it's such an absurd and dangerous practice that nobody bothers to do it anymore. What makes it even more absurd is that this weird fashion is a relatively new thing. Back prior to the Industrial Revolution, it was fashionable to have very fair, pale skin because the lower class folk were out working in the fields outdoors getting tanned, while the rich folk were indoors and not doing that sort of manual labor. And so it was fashionable for your skin to be lighter. And then I guess after the Industrial Revolution, when all the workers were in factories and the wealthy folk were laying on beaches, then it became more fashionable to have the tanned skin. It was kind of nuts that people would expose themselves to cancer risks for the sake of fashion. What makes it even more absurd is the fact that in some countries where dark skin is prominent, like in Jamaica and parts of Africa, it's fashionable to have skin that is more fair than your natural skin color. So people in those countries will bleach their skin with these horrible, dangerous chemicals in order to make it slightly lighter than their natural skin tone. And so they're exposing themselves to similar risks to look lighter, but we expose ourselves to these risks to look slightly darker. And it's all just kind of crazy to me. I have to say that as someone who is an avid fan of tattoos, the more fair your skin tone, the more those tattoos are gonna just pop and show up so nicely on your skin. So I'm pretty cool with my skin being fairly pale and having my tattoos show up nicely. My second topic has to do with bodies in general. We humans like to think of ourselves as being so advanced, so intelligent, so much above any other creature. And yet, is there a single creature on this planet who has such an absurdly insecure and awful relationship with their own body as humans do? Just think for a second how absurd it is that we have to wear clothes in hot weather. There's no other creature out there that feels ashamed and embarrassed about any parts of their body that they have to keep covered up at all times. And just the absurdity of the whole thing where the male sex has to cover up certain parts and the female sex has to cover up certain parts. When at the end of the day, regardless of your sex or gender, we're all biologically 99% identical. The fact that women have to cover their nipples, for instance, is ridiculous when you stop to think about it for half a second. The fact that I can go, hey-ho, flash my nipples on camera, no problem. My wife does the same, and there's outrage and controversy. As if somehow the male nipple is any different than the female nipple. The problem is we're facing a lot of history of cultural conditioning to certain ways of doing things, and people have a hard time getting their head around change, I guess. The problem with our relationships with our bodies is that we're going to have a real fundamental shift in how we view our basic biology, in how we look at beauty, for instance. If somehow as humans we can get to the point of realizing that diversity of looks and aesthetics is interesting and fun and beautiful, then maybe we can get to a better place where seeing bodies is not a shameful thing. One of the ironies of this perspective is that the people who will most loudly denounce a woman for not wearing a shirt are probably going to be some of the same people that loudly and perhaps rightfully denounce Muslims for saying that their women should be covered head to toe. It's such an irony that you can denounce a religion for stating that a certain amount of coverage is required, and in the next breath criticize another woman for not being covered enough. I don't know how that disconnect can exist, but somehow it does. So this is just a part of being a human that puzzles me and frustrates me. I'd love to live in a world where we all respect each other, regardless of how we look, regardless of how much or how little clothing is worn, and that we can worry about things other than seeing our own bodies. So to sum up, let's love and accept each other. I do love being outside on a hot summer day, wearing as little as possible, feeling the sun on my skin, but wearing a high SPF sunscreen in the process to protect that skin. So maybe by the time it's the middle of winter, I'll have this, and I'm talking about my, so there are two major topics I wanted to talk. So there are two major topics I wanted to yak about. Hark! I have a text message. Where's my phone? I have to say that as somebody who is an avid fan of tattoos, that my second topic right here. My second topic has to do with bodies in general. We humans like to think of ourselves as such highly intelligent, advanced. My second topic has to do with bodies. My second topic has to do with bodies in general. We humans like to think of ourselves as being so advanced, so highly intelligent, such amazing. What am I trying to say? Just think for a second how absurd it is that we even have to wear clothes in cold. And that we can... So in summary, hilarious.